Hello, everybody.
Hello, Mark.
How are you, Don?
Excellent.
Welcome to Bourbon Street. This is our first episode of this new show. I'd almost want to call it a test. And really, this came out of conversation you and I had, Don, a couple of weeks ago, where after one of the webinars that we did, we talked about let's maybe just sit around and chat for half an hour and talk about COVID-19, pivoting issues, health, finance.
Sport.
So here we are, sports.
Yeah.
So here we are. Somebody asked me about the name, and I told them that a couple of years ago, you and I had we were in New Orleans, obviously, NBA All-Star weekend, and had a pretty raw facts of life chat on Bourbon Street, which can tend to happen.
What time was that?
Pardon me?
What time did that chat happen?
Yeah, I don't know. It's 5 a.m. somewhere. So in all seriousness, when you and I talked about this a few weeks ago, it's really let's have a conversation about what's going on in the world, how we're pivoting, how other businesses are pivoting, some big serious issues. We also want to make this interactive, so start firing us your questions right away. There's not going to be any slides or decks today, but you and I thought we were going to go live like 2 weeks ago with this, and obviously a lot has changed in the world. And so I actually want to use that as a bit of a jumping off point. We're going to talk a lot today about some key things, all that really tied to some information you shared yesterday in your webinar about what's happening in consumers' minds around the world.
Absolutely, yeah. 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, we didn't have a clue what we were going to be talking about. We knew it was going to be something recent and new. I think going forward will be something recent and new. We obviously have lots to talk about. COVID is obviously still present. Social unrest or injustice or discrimination or inequality, whatever the term is, obviously has come to the forefront. I think that's really the jumping off point. I mean, the reality of today, as I talked about yesterday, or consumers talked about yesterday, the most amazing thing is that COVID or a pandemic actually makes 40 countries think and feel the same way. Personal health, financial health, 8 and 10, 6 and 10. It doesn't matter what you speak. It doesn't matter what language you speak. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter where you live. It's the exact same feeling. So we went out in the last week and asked about social unrest versus personal health concerns. Remembering 8 and 10 have a personal health concern that someone's going to die.
Right.
Financial health concerns. And we threw in social injustice, discrimination. And the fact is the leading topic of the three is social injustice. I mean, the US, 50%. Doesn't matter what age, gender, racial background, region, South, Northeast, does not matter. 50% put that as number one. Health drops to 20%. I mean, it's amazing what's going on. I think that's why today's conversation is, do we take that opportunity to actually do something? It's been an issue that just hasn't happened for the past 2 weeks. It's been, 4 centuries? Probably 20 centuries. But the point is, there is an opportunity. I was going to ask you a question.
Well, I'm going to jump in for a second. So 5 big buckets I want to talk about today, all under that headline of inequality, social justice, protests. I want to talk about the consumer. I want to talk about business and some of the responses that we've seen. I think we should talk about sport. I think we should talk about government and elections. And then I want to talk about like companies, like the workplace. So, if you're out there thinking about some of the things you want to ask us about, I think those are kind of big buckets, but you were going to ask me something.
Yeah, I was watching your Instagram post. I think it was Instagram something.
You're not on Instagram, so.
And you're walking down the street in your white t-shirt, panting. But the fact is you're using every worst practice of a social post. However, you said for a person who's outspoken,
right,
who's passionate, you actually said, I had to find my voice. I think you're 55. I was a bit shocked, humbled at the fact that it took you this thing to actually go, I have to say something.
Right.
And the reaction you had, if I look at the actual metrics, I'm a bit of a numbers nerd, as you might know, were phenomenal. The commentary was phenomenal. So I just ask you, through all the shit you've been through in your life, why did it take this? What was special or different about this moment?
interesting, actually, you talk about best practices, because I think it's a little bit of proof of if you touch a nerve. Yeah, all of us have had our hardships and our secrets, and I can tell you stories. I'm wearing this shirt today for a very specific reason. Gail Sayers is my hero. My initials are MH3, not because I'm the third. Since I was adopted, that'd be kind of difficult to do, but because Gail Sayers' biography is I'm third. And what he went through going to Chicago, becoming a star running back. If you ever watched the old movie Brian Song, and there's a teammate on that team, number 41, Brian Piccolo, who was the starter. Gail Sayers came out of the University of Kansas. He was the upstart, and he became the Rookie of the Year. The story's about how the two of them bonded, about how in the 60s, Brian Piccolo, as a white man, invited Gail Sayers into his family, into his home, kind of unheard of. And, that's why my initials are MH3. It's a nod to Gail Sayers, a nod to what he went through. So to answer your question, I think look, it's pretty harsh when you watch a man have his life choked out of him in public over 8+ minutes, when people, like, imagine this happening on Yonge Street. Our offices are a block apart. Imagine between our offices, we're screaming at a policeman to stop. And I have seen, and you've seen, and we've all seen around the world, how much that has jarred people. So I feel like maybe in the past I thought just being me and trying to be a leader was enough. It's not. And I need to take some risks. And I was going to save the story for the end, but in my video, you notice that I called out the NFL and Colin Kaepernick and signing Colin Kaepernick. And that's really just an example, right? Suppressing the players, not allowing them to protest. That video came out a week ago, Thursday. On Friday, I got a call from Dave Thompson at the NFL. And Dave's been a good friend and a client. And I was like, hey, we make small talk. And then he says, hey, Mark, I'm calling about your video. And I said, I know you are. What's going through my mind is Dave's helped me do partnerships with NFL US to hold our conferences at the draft. He's been a client. I'm thinking, did I screw it up? And I loved his question. It's like, how can we help? What can I do to help? And that was amazing. And so later today, I'm gonna talk about an initiative that I'm getting a bunch of people involved with. There's already a whole bunch of people out where we want to get more Black Canadians into our industry, and not just here in Canada, but around the world. So I want to start driving a Black talent initiative, and Dave and NFL Canada are literally put up their hands to say, we're on board. I'll get into it more, but we need to have internships that people can still, they pay them well enough to go to university. We need to go out and be proactive at the high school level to tell people, like, here are opportunities in our business. And we need to solve the diversity issue in many, many ways. I hope there's going to be 1,000 initiatives. I'm signing up for Black North. I know Julian Franklin's doing something. I traded emails the other day with Chantel Smith from the NBA, and she sent me a great rant. We have to solve this. And so that's why, just time for me to speak up. So
it's interesting. Your brand. I don't know. If you look at,
you're wobbly.
Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah. So maybe you've got two microphones going on at the same time. So I think what we want to look at, and you were hinting about brands. I think it's really interesting what's gone on. And in the past, there's been all sorts of campaigns for equality, for justice. And my hope is that this isn't going to end in June of 2020. I got to tell you that I've never seen anything like this, and I think we've all seen it. And I think the other side of all the communications is companies now being challenged to step up. We've got to step up at our company. Here's something weird, but we're 80 people, and I'm the only Black person that works here.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. I guess we deal with a lot of stuff where everyone's focusing on perfection. I think my point to your post was, just did it. You go back to Nike and why they're such a successful. The motto of just do it. I think now is the time to embrace doing shit rather than focusing on perfection. I think we spend all our lives worried about all the small things. And when you get 50% of the population focused on one thing, it's a unique opportunity in our lifetime or in the last 30 years to actually do something. And the fear is there. But the fact is, what can be done? I mean, that's really the issue is we got to do things. People have to do things. We have to have the courage to do things. When you talk about how do you do it when people aren't in an office communicating, well, you can do it through, as you just said, emails with Chantel or whomever. I mean, that's really the biggest challenge. I talked a lot recently about, I hope we turn the news on and it's still an issue 2 weeks from now.
Well, I vow to make sure it is. And, answering the question on the screen from Jordan, I don't know how long it's going to take. I can't predict the future. What I can say is I've not seen anything like this ever. And I think what's interesting is companies and brands and organizations have to figure out what to do next. And I think consumers are going to challenge them. So I'll give you a couple of really quick examples. Canadian Tire announced that they're going to donate money. People immediately are like, what are you going to do about your board? Starbucks has announced that they don't want people to wear Black Lives Matter protest gear. I love Starbucks. But I also appreciate from their end that where do you draw the line? But I think for me, what's vital to look at this is if this moment can actually help change a lot of inequality issues, I think that would be amazing. So I hope that answers your question, Jordan. Going back to you, Don, how surprised were you when you saw these numbers? I sound like a news reporter, I apologize. But it's unbelievable that Australia, the UK, this is the number one issue. We're seeing it around what has happened?
So if you look at personal health, I mean, we're just trending what's going on. You got half the people in the world saying that they are the most they've ever been concerned, extremely concerned or very concerned about their personal health, not their families, their personal health. Doesn't matter age, income. And when this comes to suppress it or surpass it in 2 weeks, it is as I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen this much focus. And it could be the fact that people have had to pause for the last 3 months at home, do different things. There's not all the noise in the world, that maybe this time we'll be able to pay attention to something. And as you talk about the inequalities across the board, and I talk a lot about that with friends and peers and with colleagues, is the fact that I think we need a lightning rod. I think we need one thing to focus on that can be bigger than that. So whether it's employment of blacks throughout the industry, we need minorities across. We need more women promoted. But the fact is, we try and do everything. Often we end up doing nothing, and that's where there's a lightning bolt. And that's one of the things I'm looking forward to, is using our resources to keep it front and center, not only from a Canadian issue, but from a U.S. issue, but from an international issue, to say, how do we keep the pulse on this and see what it actually resonates to actually let people share.
All these brands are reacting, and I know you've done some recent testing. Who has tested well with consumers? Who are consumers believing?
So this actually sits to the fact of how powerful this message is. So we looked at the Nike ad, we looked at the L'Oreal ad with Viola Davis, and we looked at the P&G ad, the look from July 2019, which I'll give you a link to all three of them.
People need to look, no pun intended, look that ad up from P&G 2019. So that's a year ago.
So we looked at this. We do tests. We've done, 20,000 tests of ads. And typically these types of messages make people feel better about themselves or feel better about the company, but do very little for anything else. And what Nike did and L'Oreal did had no intention, I don't believe, to drive purchase. They were just someone had the courage to respond to a need. So the answer is phenomenal. Not only did it have 80% relevance, we never see that number. 80%, it was 81 and 78%. Ability up 50%. But most importantly to the brand, and this is bigger than selling goods, but the byproduct actually being something that relevant, had 60% intending to purchase the product. We got to think about this. You're talking about a t-shirt or shoe company. You're talking about a detergent, or you're talking about and you're talking about someone who makes cosmetics leading the charge, when you have all these other institutions, all these other politicians, all these government organizations, all the causes and charities, with all due respect, have the opportunity to do so. And it takes these companies to do it because they actually are prepared and have the courage and leadership to do something. And that's really It's an amazing feat what they've done, and we'll be sharing that information to promote and show how impactful, if you're actually relevant and serve the people, how well you can go.
Let's talk about the risks. A guy named Dave sent Jeff Bezos an email this week. I don't know Dave's last name, but I'm going to read you his email. The subject line was Black Lives Matter. This is from Dave to Jeff Bezos, who's the richest person in the world, right? Not Dave, Jeff Bezos.
And his wife is a second. Keep going.
Right, his ex-wife. Subject line, Black Lives Matter. You are a perfect asshole. You obviously are not an idiot, or you wouldn't have the financial success that you've had. I was placing an order with your company when I discovered your statement of support for Black Lives Matter. Pledging support for a bunch of worthless ends, since it's been blacked out in the email, I won't read it, will ruin your company. White America is sick and tired of this N bullshit. I canceled my order, and I know for a fact I won't be the only one. Maintain your stance, and we will watch your profits decline and laugh about it. My business relationship with you is over. I was going to read this word for word, but I'm not going to. F you in the A, you piece of S-H-I-T. So how much risk? This is the richest man in the world. That's pretty violent.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the emotion behind it. Whether he'll care or not, or whether it'll fall on deaf ears, obviously someone's going to care about it. Right. And the reality is everyone's got to move, and they don't need to talk to an agency. They don't need to talk to their team. They need to think about what is actually right. And the point is, the U.S., unfortunately, is not ready. A lot of them are not ready to do what they know is right. There's too many reasons why they supposedly can't do it. All they do is give excuses of why they can't do it. So,
but it's changing. NASCAR's banned the Confederate
flag. I know. I agree. It's changing. I'm not trying. I'm just.
Bubba Wallace is driving a Black Lives Matter car this week.
I agree. The NFL for after all the pressure they've taken for multiple years, finally goes, yeah, we were wrong, and donates $250 to try and cover them. So there are amazing changes happening, and companies will pay for it on the negative side. Unfortunately, not that many people will know about the negative side. The one thing is, we are too close to it. Awareness of stuff is so small, and it needs to have someone to actually push it up, or people to push it up. And this might have it. Like, if you're not socially responsible, you could pay dearly, and you should pay dearly. So there's two sides to that coin. But I digress there.
So sports changing. U.S. soccer is now allowing their players to kneel. I suspect that when we see the NBA come back in a few weeks, you're going to see a lot of messaging. Let's go back to this point. You and I talked about this yesterday, so I'm going to put you on the spot a little. Do you think this is going to last?
Well, I've never seen consumer sentiment so equal across the board, hitting all people. It's going to be up to the community. It will not last unless the community stays behind it. Okay. So we're supposed to be honest here. This is why we're doing it, because we're actually speaking our mind. Yeah. I'm very, very concerned. You turn the news on in 2 weeks, it will not be there. Very concerned. People jump on the moment. It's the shiny thing. It's been shitty for 400 years. The largest capital movement was the slave trade. No one talks about it. Right. There's massive buildings in England built out of slave trade. And the fact is, no one talks about it. They talk about how beautiful it is.
I'm worried someone's going to get me and say Bourbon Street. Like, I'm sure the count to whoever in France that named Bourbon Street had slaves. Like, I'm not joking. It's impossible. But so you said 2 weeks. So
I'm saying I think we'll know in 2 weeks. I think if you turn on the TV and it's not there, and I'm not talking the niche, I'm talking the mainstream, they got to keep buoying this up. We need to stay in the streets, or it's going to fade. You have to do radical change. And the fear is that nothing's going to happen. And history would prove that nothing's going to happen. This is not the first person that has been videotaped being murdered.
Right.
So if you look at Einstein's doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, we have to do something different. As individuals, as companies, we have to do something different to make this front and center and keep it front and center, and don't let it dissipate. But I am fearful.
So this question is, Ben and Jerry's talking about dismantling white supremacy. Why do you think they took such a bold stance, and what's your thoughts on that? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Ben and Jerry's has been owned by Unilever for decades, right? So as much as they're portrayed as a unique, they're part of a global empire. What's your thoughts on that?
Will the profits decrease? Definitely not long term. And the reality is, if you get your message out there, it can't be self-serving. You have to do it for the right reason. You have to follow that Nike or L'Oreal. You have to do it for the right reason.
Right.
You continue. It has to be a strategy of good, not a strategy of profit. If you add value to people's lives, long term, you will win. If you focus on profits, long term, you will lose. Jeff Bezos' comment about him, if he focuses on profits long term, he is going to lose. He's not going to care because he's going to be wealthier than any man ever. But in the reality is, if you have it, you can't think if you don't know right now what to do, probably don't do it. If you have to ask someone, is it a good idea? I can tell you right now, it's a shitty idea. The fact is, if it's not,
people are hypersensitive. I've never received more requests for my opinion in my life than I have in the last 6, 7, 8 days.
Right? Because
I panicked about doing the wrong thing.
We panic every day. The foundation of our conversation today came from, wouldn't it be nice to actually be retired and be able to speak our minds? Was part of the foundation of Bourbon St. And the reality,
I don't ever want to retire. I'll come visit you at your retirement. And
the reality is that, speaking your mind is, I don't know if courage is the right word, but the fear of repercussions from actually.
Okay. So this question leads into that. Greg Glassman, CEO of CrossFit. I'm pretty sure, and I could look it up, but I'm pretty sure he was the guy who tweeted Floyd 19. He's now had to step down. I mean, I've seen Glassman speak. This is the guy who took the theory of training and rebuilt it and has built an empire where literally there are thousands of CrossFit boxes around the world, CrossFit games. He lost the Reebok partnership, and with all due respect to Reebok, I think the single best marketing thing they've done the last 6, 7 years has been their connection to CrossFit. So people are afraid to speak their minds. It's costing him right now. How does CrossFit recover? Who should be their next CEO? Like, what do you think?
But the reality is, you do need to speak your mind. I think this is your question before was, do you think this is going to last? A question that someone else asked before. Yeah. If we don't speak our mind, it's going to be the same old. So the point is, it's upon us to speak our minds, upon us to help people gain a voice, meaning to give them the facts, to actually give them a voice. So they go, you're in the majority. Yeah. Like, you're not in the minority here, you're in the majority. It goes back to smoking. You used to smoke in hospitals and airplanes, not trying to equate the two. But no one understood that 60% did not smoke and hated smoking. All you need to do, you got the majority. So we need to educate people that they have the majority and not to be afraid.
So there's a little election happening in the US. We're a couple years away from elections in Canada. So I don't want to just pick on the US, but I am going to use that obviously as a proxy. You see people like the new athletic director at UCLA, I've forgotten his name. The first thing he did, he's never actually been on campus. He was hired digitally. He hasn't been there. I should look up his name. But the first thing he did was he's launched a voting initiative to get students voting. A whole ton of US college coaches have said, we don't want practice. We want to give athletes the day off. And somebody's now asking me a political question. I've already beaten you to it. Thank you, Carol Starr. But LeBron James has just launched More Than a Vote. What do you think the impact of this is on elections? I know you're not necessarily a pollster, but I'm going to put you on the spot.
Well, reality is, from everything I've researched, Trump won the vote in the U.S. because the white women majority voted for him, which is enough said. And 8 million less African Americans came out to vote.
Right.
That's the difference. Even though, and Hillary had a bigger popular vote, but didn't win due to electoral votes. But the reality is, I think it could have a dramatic impact, the most important impact, if you can get the minorities or visible minorities out to vote. The Republicans are done.
But on a broader level, as we start thinking about your hometown in Saskatoon or my hometown in Orillia, things we're seeing people throwing statues in the river in England. You think about around the world, Racism is not just a U.S. problem. We're so guilty of it here. It's unbelievable. What do you think is going to happen over the next couple of years in elections and just politicians in general? And like, hey, I'm pretty sure the Mulrooney family is not very happy today.
Right. Well, as we know, not being a cynic, which I am, on politics, is they're going to do what's ever good for them. So if you put enough notice to them that the populist vote goes this way, everyone's going to switch that way. So that's up to us to make us as a community to make sure they understand how important this is across the board. Discrimination is so present; it's just hidden.
So you asked before, and it's funny you mentioned about hidden. One of the things I shared with some of the people in my team are the things that I kind of went through, and I by no means put myself up to being persecuted. But to your point, there's a huge difference between what's hidden and what's in your face. So my very first meeting in the United States, I went to Chicago to present to literally the president of a company. It was at an ad agency in Chicago. I don't want to mention the name of the company because it wouldn't be fair to Leo Burnett. And I went in the back door for the meeting, and one of the account people from the agency who hadn't met me before came over to me and I was sneaking in because they were mid-presentation. And she came over and she said to me, "That's okay. We don't need any more coffee."
Seriously?
Yeah.
What year was that?
Doesn't matter. It happened in my lifetime. It was in my career. It's probably.
No, I don't mean. I'm
not. I'm 99.
I'm not trying to.
Yeah. It was after slavery was abolished. Just for the record.
Yeah, I mean, on discrimination. I mean, I test Apple's logo. This is something. Yeah. Apple's logo, the black. Apple's logo, the silver. Apple's logo with the rainbow.
Yeah.
Gay pride. The demand for the product goes down by 40% with the rainbow on it. And everyone says how pro they are. The fact is we're not. That's Canada and the US. It's a shocking impact on the discrimination that's real. So what do we do about it? We got to keep it front and center. I think from an electoral point of view, they will go wherever their votes are. So if we make it known, if people can make it known that this is where sentiment lies and this is what's expected, you're going to see more of a switch from the politicians.
So 10-second answer to Santiago's question. Do you see it as tokenism? Their thoughts?
100% not. You can't be that quick, that responsive, that real, that raw, 2 minutes, 2 minute one commercial, 1 minute another. You cannot be that good by being a fake.
The other day I said to you and I could sit down anywhere in the world and fill half an hour without any effort. And guess what? We've just done that. So I know we're going to try to do this again if people like it. I know we had at least 9 people on our YouTube channel watching. I think my mom's bridge club was busy, so we didn't break 10. We are going to get back to this, but I am actually just going to leave a last call to action, which is send me a note, send Don a note, join us. I am trying to gather a group of people. I want to put together a Black Talent Initiative. I am the first one who's going to hold up, and we've already talked about this at our company. We have 80 people. We have 1 Black person. Our percentages are not right. It's not appropriate. I'm not going to ask you how many Black people work at IMI, but I think you and I be a couple of people who can help keep this driving along. And I think the next time we get together, I'm hoping this is still at the forefront. I was going to say an issue. That's the wrong term, but we don't know what we're going to be talking about again in a couple of weeks.
So before you go, though, what does success look like for your talent initiative?
What does success look like?
Yeah.
In the next 12 months, 100 fully funded Black internships for Black Canadians, that they're paid enough so that a kid who doesn't have a parent behind them or a family that can support him, that he or she can take that job and still go to McGill or UBC or whatever. And because right now, our internships played between honorariums and minimum wage, and it's just not accessible, and people don't know about them. So
100
numbers guy, I'm 100 internships for Black Canadians, incremental to what's there.
Well, Don's in, and I'm sure I can influence IMI to help support in any way we can.
And I know the NFL's in. Dave Thompson's already told me. I think actually maybe I just committed him. Sorry if your HR department gets mad at you, Dave. But thanks everybody. Thanks, Don.
Thank you very much. Have a good day, Mark.
Everybody.